Can we go into here?
Sure.
And this is where the Leslie is. And is there room here? So tell us, this is a 122?
Yeah, that's a 122 model. And this is kind of what most people would do nowadays, I think, to capture the sound of a Leslie, since you have a rotating horn at the top, which you can't see, unfortunately.
Of course, yeah.
And you also have a rotating speaker at the bottom as well.
Yep.
So the big thing about the Leslie's sound is that whole Doppler effect of that fast rotor, slow rotor kind of sound whipping around your head. So in years past, you know, in some rock records and even on some jazz records as well, some people would just take one microphone and maybe stick it here or towards the back of the cabinet and kind of capture sound that way. Sometimes you were able to take the direct line of the bass signal as well.
I heard Rudy Van Gelder's thing is he takes a direct line from the organ.
Yes.
So you don't do that.
Unfortunately, we can't with this model because of the way that it's been modified.
Oh.
Yeah, his technique was to take a direct line from the organ so he could get a clean bass sound, and he used a couple of mics on top. He kind of pointed them toward the louvers, kind of like that. So his technique was a little bit different. Obviously, it sounded great.
But the bass today, I was really impressed. It was big, fat, juicy.
Yeah.
What did you process it? Or
No, that's just everything that you heard today was clean. You know, there's no processing.
So
on
what
it, no
kind of
compression.
mics are what's going
This
on?
is we've got on top is a pair of Shure KSM 32s, which is a newer model of a Shure condenser microphone, which sound great.
Distance is important.
Distance is important because, number one, you need to have the instrument breathe a little bit. If you have something right up on a source, really not...
Sounds very sharp.
And it's not really capturing the sound of the instrument in the room
The
either.
Doppler effect.
Yeah.
When we were listening, wow.
Yeah.
A lot of
It's
times
an
when you
important part.
record a Hammond, it does not come through.
Mm-hmm.
You hear the fast, but when it's on slow, it sounds like
Yeah.
amazing.
And this lets you get that wideness a little bit more, and you get the spread in between the speakers, I think, a little bit better
And you
as well.
put one on both sides. So are these separately channel? Or
Yes,
what?
they are. Yeah, so each microphone that you see is on their own separate track, so you're
wow.
able to process them a little bit
And
differently.
this is our bass mic, I assume.
Yeah, and that is on the bass speaker down at the bottom, which, because it's so big and kicks out, you know, so many low frequencies, it has a tendency to move a lot of air. So we put a windscreen on it as well. Usually you would just use that for vocals, but because this thing actually pushes air, and even though it has louvers on the bottom as well, sometimes you can actually hear the air moving down there.
Oh,
So
yeah,
that actually helps out a little bit. And that microphone is a replica of an older tube microphone made by Neumann. That's a Lawson. It's kind of like a copy of a U-47,
Wow.
which is known for that kind of big,
The
huge
bass was,
sound.
The bass was fat. I don't know. Have you worked in other studios with Hammond organs?
A couple, yeah.
Because I noticed it's always a problem. The bass is too thin, and that was not a problem.
Yeah, and that, you know, sometimes that's the cabinet itself, and sometimes it's the gear, but, you know, usually it has to do with the cabinet. Some people's stuff has been drug around for a long time, so.
So this is, and out of curiosity, so is there any other like things that people should know when they're recording a Leslie?
You really just want to make sure that it sounds the same as it does when you stand in front of it. I mean, that's really the trick. And you have to kind of be careful about what you do. You know, you kind of have to follow the normal recording techniques that you would use for anything else in terms of where you place it. You know, like we were saying earlier, whether it's too close, too far away, you get too much of the room showing up in the microphone. But the most important thing is to, you know, go for the sound that you want to hear, and then go get it.
So today for my session, did you mic this differently than you would have for a rock or a gospel?
Probably. I think with the gospel thing, you know, depending on how it's being used, you also have to think about the instrumentation of the ensemble, how it's going to sit in with other instruments. If you have a real big rock mix, you know, all this spinning around stuff and this big low end may not fit right. Your best technique may be just stick a mic a couple feet back from it, just one of them, and that may work the best. I think that Rick Wakeman only used one microphone and a direct line.
How about a gospel type?
Gospel, I would tend to use kind of this same setup.
Yeah.
And you can always, you know, here's the great thing about recording with all these microphones. If you feel like that spinning thing is too much, you can always take one microphone away.
Now, out of curiosity, is the volume on? It's on half or full, or how do you?
I think it might be kind of down a lot, to tell you the truth.
That's another thing that I don't like in my own club, which isn't so large. I don't like to turn the volume all the way. It
Right.
distorts it. It's not music, and I keep it at half. And
Right.
maybe my club is a little smaller than this room. And plus, I believe that music at 100 decibels, when you're exposed to it for prolonged periods of time, it can hurt your ear. How loud can a
Yeah.
Leslie?
This thing cranks out a lot of noise. This thing gets really, really loud, and you know, we've obviously backed it off to the point where you can still get that musicality out of it. But you know, on a real blazing kind of rock song that people would want that kind of overdriven sound, you turn it up, and it does it great.
But so the secret is, though, to control the volume.
Yeah. This thing can get out of control real fast.
So now, of course, Mark Knox is going to do the what's it called, the mix down. But after you record, is there any kind of processing or any kind of stuff that you need to do that?
For a jazz record, I usually try to stay away from a lot of over the top kind of processing that you would do sometimes
Compression.
on other things. I found that I did a record like this about a year ago, and I found that the bass has a tendency to disappear on some notes. So you really kind of want to usually compress the bass so that stays even throughout.
So
It's
yeah,
easy to lose that.
well, Mark's a top engineer, so we can.
Sure.
Okay. I'm here with Mark Knox. Mark is going to do the mixing, and you're going to do the mastering too? Correct?
Sure. Yeah.
On my CD, and for people, it's their first time making a CD. Can you explain what mixing and mastering is?
Well, today we had about, I believe, 17 tracks worth of stuff. Each instrument is isolated, and we get it just right. Add a little reverb and some nice equalization, make things brighter or duller, depending. And then mastering is kind of like the icing on the cake. It gives everything a nice sheen, and you prepare it for duplication.
What's the difference between mixing and mastering?
Mixing, you're taking several sources and mixing them down to a stereo track. Whereas mastering, you take the existing stereo track and you just even fine-tune a little bit more.
Here to a lot of other studios, but it's nice. The intimacy is kind of nice as well, and certainly works good for kind of a jazz setting like we had today.
We had an invisible drum set.
Right.
And by the way, we had, I forget, well, actually Mark talked back and forth. I wanted all the musicians in one room. And I don't know who it wasn't so crazy about that idea. Studios look a lot different nowadays. They used to go in and all you saw were the. That's now on. This is called Pro Tools.
That's correct.
Can you explain to me, like when I'm picking a studio, there's different recording methods. Some jazz musicians like to go analog, and what's the general?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of changes throughout the history of recording in terms of technology and format and all those things that have played a large role in people's sound throughout time. You know, nowadays the whole digital issue has become one such that people who can move faster and give you more options is becoming more of something that people want to look for.